Ding Dong YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I am the Jobless Coder, and today I have some unfortunate news to share with you, which is that the 2022 planned release for Christmas Decoration Sandbox will be delayed yet another year. This game is not yet ready, and I basically have no other choice at this point but to delay the release of the game again until next year, 2023. There is a lot of stuff that has transpired over the past month here in November that I'm going to be covering in this video. The good news is that when I'm done talking about that, I will be showing some gameplay footage, early alpha, beta gameplay footage of the Christmas Decoration Sandbox to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what the game entails. It is definitely a very distinct and different game than the Halloween game. It's going to include a lot more features added to it that are not in the Halloween game. So if that interests you, make sure to watch that as well. If you're not interested in the personal life stuff that I'm going through, then that's fine. You know, you can skip a long timeline at the bottom to the chapter where I start talking about the actual gameplay for the Christmas Decoration Sandbox. And if you're new to this channel, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe. Alright, where should I begin? Let's start with the end of October Halloween. I did a live stream where I showed some gameplay footage for the new update for the Halloween Decoration Sandbox. It went well, I think. I put out the update, we had Halloween, and then we were into November. Now, in order to get the Christmas Decoration Sandbox ready for the beginning of December, I would essentially have to have it ready for production by the middle of November. So I already kind of had that on my plate. One of the features that I want to include in the Christmas Decoration Sandbox, and I'm not exactly sure yet still how I want to do it, is some form of advent countdown calendar. It's very typical. People see either the advent calendars where you get chocolates or toys or just have nothing, but they count down to Christmas. Now, in order to do an advent calendar countdown to Christmas properly, that would mean that the game would need to be ready by the 1st of November. And Steam has a 2-week long process where your game must be announced on the Steam store for at least 2 weeks, meaning that the game would have to be ready by the middle of November. Plus, there's a 3 or 4 day business wait for them to test the game and get ready for release. But I thought that I could do it if I pulled off enough marketing materials before the 15th that I could get the store page out. That gives it 2 weeks of being open on the Steam page, and then I would have another week and a half to work on the game to get all the final features added in, and then do this test with the Steam review team to release it. Now, part of that time included a family vacation. On the 2nd of November, our family got on a plane and we flew down to Phoenix, Arizona for a week-long trip. We went to the championship NASCAR race that was held at the NASCAR racetrack down in Phoenix. This is something that was a given. I knew this was going to happen. My dad has been planning this vacation for 2 years. We were supposed to go during 2020, but then everything collapsed during the pandemic and everything was shut down, borders locked and whatnot, and all of public gatherings, sporting events canceled, so we didn't go. He postponed the trip until 2021, but even last year at this point, it still wasn't looking great, at least for Canadians. To have their freedom of movement back. The border was still basically shut down. So this year was a big, massive year for us to be able to go and do that. And I had to incorporate this into my schedule. The trip was fun. It was fantastic. We got to see Kyle Busch, that's our favorite race car driver, drive in the number 18 car for the last time under the M&M's sponsorship. It was quite a spectacular event. Plus, there was other things we did throughout the week that were not just the NASCAR race. So that time off of work was already incorporated into my plans for the month. What was not incorporated into my plans for the month was that my boss that I'm working for currently, Jason Effects, was also going to be going to Oklahoma to visit some friends for a couple weeks at the end of October. And he didn't help but mention until the 1st of November when he left that, oh, by the way, I'm in America, and because I'm in America, I don't want to deal with any banking or pay or anything like that until I get back. So we're sitting here from the dev team being like, okay, I guess we're not getting paid at the beginning of the month again. And he never gave us an estimated time on when he was supposed to return either. So for a good 10 days or so, I'm freaking out because I didn't get my paycheck at the beginning of the month. And here we are going on this big trip down to Phoenix. So I'm not going to have any money to spend on souvenirs at all either. I had to borrow a bunch from my dad. And then the other problem is that I didn't know how stable the pay situation would be once he got back. Now, since he's returned, we've discussed it and we've addressed our issues around the pay. And he went down again to Oklahoma this past week, and he did pay us beforehand, before he left. Going into December here. So we didn't have to worry about a late situation with pay, but it's very stressful for people who work paycheck to paycheck, essentially, to not have that as a reliable source of income. It was, I think, the 16th of November was when, or the 15th of November was when he got back, and we got paid on the 16th of November. So for a good 16 days, I'm literally losing my mind. So we go on this trip, we get back from the trip, and then for like the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, still no pay, still no pay, still no pay. I'm freaking out. Because of course this is exactly what happened to me when I was in Vancouver 4 years ago. Exactly, almost to a T. Exactly what happened. And in the same freaking month too, right? When I was in Vancouver, and I haven't fully told this story from start to finish. I've given bits and pieces of it throughout my videos. I plan to tell it in full detail eventually. I'm even going to be writing a book on some of the stuff I've dealt with because it's almost too hard to believe that it's even true. The literal miles of bullshit that I've had to crawl through in this industry to get where I am. When I was in Vancouver in 2018, I had literally just bought a brand new TV on a Black Friday sale, and then the next day, literally the next day in November, my paycheck bounced, and then that began the series of events that led to my eventual firing at that job. And for me to be going through the same pay situation now 4 years later, and in November of all times of the year when we're going into the most expensive bloody season in the entire calendar, it was not very good. So I was up in arms. I was quite livid. I was frantic. I was applying to all sorts of new jobs, trying to find some new position to work so that I could get more stable pay. And so because of that, I spent virtually no time working on the Christmas game. My intended plan was to get back from vacation and then gung-ho a-blazing every day working on the Christmas game. And instead, I spent most of the day freaking out, having mental breakdowns, and applying for new jobs. So, as I've mentioned, the pay situation has now been addressed with Jason. We'll just have to play it by ear and see if going forward pay continues to be progressively getting worse, or whether or not it remains constant or improves. Who knows? So that extra week long that I was spending applying for jobs and rewriting my resume and updating cover letters and all of that jazz is time that I lost working in productivity on the Christmas game. So that extra week there is essentially what put me behind, to the point where I essentially gave up for being able to publish it this year. It's unfortunate because Tech Skull Studios hasn't published anything since October of 2020, the Halloween game, and there are other projects I'm working on. I have about 15 games on the go right now, and I kind of bounce back and forth between them progressively. I have a little bit of ADHD with that, not being able to adequately focus on one thing in particular, and that comes into the second half of the video here, where I'm going to be talking about the meetings that I've had with some friends of mine. I sat down this past month and I had 2 separate meetings with a friend of mine who works in marketing. And I want to leave his name out. I don't want to give any personal information about him because he does work for a marketing agency, and I don't really know the extent of legalities he has with his contract or whether or not there's any non-compete clauses. The information that he's given me probably not entirely legal to even be giving me this information, but let's just say for the record that everything that he has told me is entirely off the books. Now, for me, this is a very enlightening experience, I would say. It's also a very frustrating experience. It's enlightening because I've never actually had the opportunity to sit down with someone who is a professional marketer and go over my projects and have them address some of the problems with them and come to an understanding of why it is that a lot of them tend to fail. It's also exceedingly stressful because I feel that a lot of the questions that he was asking me were things that I could not have possibly answered without having prior knowledge through experience. Specifically, having the experience of selling a game successfully is the amount of knowledge that I would have needed to answer some of his questions. Some of them that he posed to me, for example, were very generic, overarching questions that were like, oh, well, can you tell me why somebody would buy a video game? Why does people play games? What motivates them to purchase a game and play it? And I understand that when it comes to marketing, a lot of it is understanding human behavior and being able to craft your product to serve them in their endeavors. I hear a lot of people, very successful guru type people, they talk about, it's all about convincing someone to give you their money. And there's a variety of different ways that you can go about doing that. You can be fraudulent, you can lie to them, you can scam them. You can, like the FTX guy, right, with the crypto, you can create all these massive scam companies, or you can do it the proper way. Start a business, create a product, sell something, market it to people that are within your specific niche group. All of those things I understand. But to ask me, what motivates a person to buy a video game, I mean, frankly, I don't know. It gets a lot into the, psychology aspect of things and, even personal counseling and therapy, if you would go that far. Why does a person play a video game? I don't know. Maybe their dad is an alcoholic and beats them, and then they escape to their room and they play video games on their computer to try to forget how much life actually sucks. A lot of it is escapism, being able to play a character, play out a storyline, do some kind of fantasy role play, experience things that you wouldn't get to do in the real world. The classic meme, I shoot people in Grand Theft Auto, therefore I don't have to kill them in real life, as a way of expelling the stresses of the day into a video game as opposed to actually going and doing something violent. Now, this friend of mine who is the marketer, I'm actually very thankful that he did sit down with me, and for as long as he did, because each conversation was roughly 4 hours long, and I could tell that both of us were getting exceedingly frustrated with each other. And now from his perspective, I can see his frustration. He's probably never met anyone in his life who is inept as I am when it comes to marketing. He probably didn't even think that it was possible to be this absolutely clueless when it comes to basic marketing fundamentals and principles. And it could just be because of, antisocial personality or some kind of mental illness that blocks me from being able to really connect with and understand people. But I genuinely fundamentally don't understand other people. When I was in high school, me and my brother worked on an app, a mobile app. We spent 6 months making it, and we showed it to all our friends in the school, and every single one of them told us the exact same story. This game looks amazing and fantastic, and I can't wait to play it when it comes out, and I'm totally going to support you guys and buy it. We put 6 months of work into this game, and when it finally launched, nobody bought it. Nobody bought it. The one person who bought it was like my closest friend, and that was essentially it. We made more money selling promotional t-shirts for this app than we did selling the actual app. It was $1 iPhone game, but everyone was already buying $1 game, whether it was Angry Birds or Flappy Birds or Tiny Birds or whatever other bird related game that they were buying at the time. They all told us they would buy our game. They never did. So don't sit here and ask me, oh, well, why do you think that? Because I don't frankly know. All these people told us, that they were going to buy the game, and then they didn't. So then we started exploring some of the more fundamental reasons behind, or what motivates a person to play a game and buy a game and whatnot. My friend, he showed me this game that is so unremarkable and so completely forgettable. I have no idea what the game actually is, other than apparently it's exceedingly popular, and it's even been memed into having real-world merchandise, which I have honestly never seen any merchandise for this game before. It looks like absolute trash. And I mean intentionally it looks bad. The art style looks like it was drawn by a 2-year-old, just random scribble drawings. It has this like 2D artwork and a 3D world kind of vibe to it. I have no idea what the game is about, other than I guess you're like playing in a classroom and your teacher starts chasing you, trying to kill you or something. And he kept asking me over and over again, well, why do you think people would play this game? What's the appeal for this game? Apparently it's been picked up by streamers, millions of views on their videos playing this game. And I'm like, why do people play this game? Frankly, why does anybody do fucking anything? I don't understand, because it doesn't look appealing to me. If I was a big YouTube streamer with millions of views on my video, it's not something I would personally pick up and play. I don't understand what the appeal is. And he kept asking me over and over again, what's the appeal? Where's the angle? Where's it coming? And I don't know. And he would ask me these questions. We would go down this train where he would ask something and I would either answer with, I don't know, or give him an answer that wasn't adequate. And then he would ask another question and another. And that could just be his teaching style, trying to push me and force me to come to the conclusions myself. But eventually you got to realize that asking me the same question, just worded a different way for the 30th time, isn't going to produce an answer. If I don't know is the answer, then I don't know. And asking me the question again and again and again is not going to come to some fruitful understanding of it. The best thing at that point is to just flat out tell me, well, this is the reason why. And from what I understand, from what he did eventually tell me, is that I guess it's some sort of mystery or something to the game that is the big appeal. Like, you don't understand why this teacher is trying to kill you and you want to find out, so you play it for, I guess, the story. But then you look at other games that don't have a story, like Minecraft, for example, and it's exceedingly popular, and it's an open sandbox game. There's no story required, and that's kind of where my Decoration Sandbox fall in. Without having a story, it's just a single player game. Minecraft, of course, is multiplayer. I want to be able to include some multiplayer stuff in eventually. I'm not sure how to go about doing that, but it's a work in progress. I feel like these meetings with my friend were both productive and also extremely disorientating. As I mentioned, I've got like 15 games on the go, and I can't really decide which one to sit down and fully flush out, simply because I don't really know which one is marketable and which one's actually going to make money. I was working on one game. It turns out that there's another game that's very similar, already produced in the same genre. And so he was asking me, oh, what's the price point for your game? And I said, oh, about $30. I'm anticipating this game is going to take 3 years or more to make. And he's like, oh, $30, you're going to get absolutely destroyed at that price point. And then he showed me the other game that's like very similar, and it's priced at $15. And it's like, well, geez, man, if I'm going to spend 3 years of my life working on a game and essentially making no money the entire time until the game is produced, I'd kind of like to sell it for a little bit more than $15. But this game is sold hundreds of thousands of copies. So at $15, it's like $7 million made on this one game. And then he's asking me, of course, well, do you think you can be better than them, or would you match the same quality as them? And it's like, I mean, I don't know. I'm going into this entirely blind from a marketing perspective. He kept asking me if I want to make games for a hobby or if I want to make games for an income, which I found personally offensive. Now, I don't typically take offense to a lot of things. Like, it really takes a lot to offend me. But the notion that it's an either or, that I either have to make games for money or I can make games that I want to make, but then nobody's going to play them. It's like, well, why can't you do both? Why can't you make a game that is fun to make and that I want to make? Oh, well, because there's no market for it. Well, so what then? You just throw the entire idea out and you just, well, there's no market for it. Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to make money or do you want to make games? It's like, well, I understand that, you know, not every idea is going to be marketable, but none of my ideas are marketable. I'm working on so many different games, and so far in the past decade of making games, the only game that has brought any sort of profit to it is not even my own. It's working on bare backstreets for Jason Effects. So if you look at every single one of my ideas and my games that I've put forward, not a single one of them is marketable. I don't know what it feels like to be successful. I don't know what it feels like to win. I don't know what it feels like to make any money at all doing this. And I don't think that is something my friend was fully understanding or comprehending. The degree of failure that I am in. Because they're talking about numbers in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and the millions of dollars. And I'm like, I don't think you understand how much $1,000 is life-changing to me. You guys are talking big picture stuff. I'm right here at the bottom struggling to make ends meet, and $1,000 is life-changing for me. So I understand that from your perspective, if you had have worked on big companies that is dealing with millions of dollars worth of sales, then you come from a different perspective, which is why I feel that a lot of the questions you were asking me were geared towards an answer that could have only been produced by someone that had personally experienced success. Asking me, well, why do you think your games failed? I frankly don't know. I don't know. Why don't you tell me? Because if I did know, then you think I wouldn't have changed what I was doing to try and market it? I am not a marketer. I'm a games developer. I'm an engineer. That's something that we've addressed recently here in the last year. I've come to understand my place in this world. I'm an engineer. I build games. I don't sell them. I'm not a marketer. I don't connect emotionally with people on the fundamental plane of reality that requires you to be able to sell. I couldn't sell a diamond to someone if I was giving it away for bloody free. So don't sit there and expect me to understand why it is that my games didn't sell, because they work. They're relatively bug-free. Of course, the Halloween game launched with a lot of bugs, and that was something I brought up, but that wasn't fundamentally the reason that it didn't sell. So this game that I was working on, that he said that I would get bled to death at a price point of $13 and that I really need to aim for $15, I kind of decided to put that on the back burner as well, because then they were talking about, oh, you need to add a story to it and do this and that, and then the next thing you know, we're making a Five Nights at Freddy's clone and we got to add these horror elements, and I was like, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to build a horror game. I didn't. And they're like, oh, the arcade is condemned and you need to find out why. It's like, I don't want to build a condemned arcade. I want to build a lively arcade that's fun and colorful and bright. It's like, oh, but nobody's going to buy that because it's exactly like this other game. It's like, well, they're fine. Okay, I'll put that on the back burner and we'll switch to something else. Besides, it's probably not the next project I should work on anyways, given that it is a very complex and technically challenging game that's going to take several years. And so for me to put that as my next project, I would need to have more of a team, more of a structure behind me to do that, more modelers, more graphic designers, more things of that nature. So we decided to switch over to something that was a little bit easier. I have a board game that I'm working on. It's based off of a board game from the 80s, real life board game. No, it's not Monopoly. It's actually more fun than Monopoly. It's my favorite game, and it is extremely obscure. There's like 6 pictures on Google of it, if you can even find that. And even YouTubers who specialize in talking about vintage board games don't even have this in their collection or have made a video about it. So it is exceedingly obscure, and no one seems to know what this game even is. Although the fact that my mother has owned it since I was born and I've always enjoyed playing it ever since a kid. It's a stock market game. It's about investing in the stock market. It's not entirely realistic, but it does teach a lot of fundamental concepts. So my friend is asking me, well, how realistic do you want it to be? Because this isn't realistic and that's not realistic. It's like, well, I know those aren't realistic. It's not the way the actual stock markets work, but trust me when I say that the game, it plays fun. The fundamental rules of the game, they work in such a way that it plays fun. So then he was asking about the game itself. So I was like, okay, giving him information about it. And the more and more he did research on the game, the less comfortable he felt being a part of that project, or even me doing it, specifically because of the likeness of the game. Now, I did my research at the time. From what I understood completely, you cannot copyright the rule set to a game. So you could make a Monopoly clone as long as it didn't use any of the same looking assets. But my friend's like, oh no, you absolutely can't do that. If I were to make a Monopoly clone and change everything in the names and the look, it would still be Monopoly and I would still get sued. And I'm like, well, I don't know. He's a marketer. He's not a lawyer. Maybe I do need to talk to a lawyer to get more information about that. The problem is that the company that published this game has been bankrupt since the early 80s. This game hasn't existed since the 80s. It's been almost 40 years since it would have been sold on any box store shelving. So I don't even know where the IP for this game has gone, if it just disappeared into the ether somewhere. There's no information at all on Google that I can find about this company or what happened when they went bankrupt, whether or not they were acquired by another company, where that IP sits. I know that sometimes when companies acquire other companies, they get a whole host of IP that just lay dormant for years. When Hasbro bought out Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers, they got thousands of board games in their IP library that are probably never, ever, ever, ever going to see the light of day. So my question is, how exactly do you quantify these intellectual property rights? I have no idea if anybody, I don't even know if the creators of this board game are even still alive, or whether or not the rights to the game were sold off as part of the publisher deal when they would have sold to the publisher of the board game. So we're going through all these, and there's a lot of questions about, well, how do you find information about a company that's been bankrupt for almost 40 years? How do you track these people down and trace them down? And essentially the answer I got, well, it was basically you can't. You essentially can't track these people down. So it's like, oh, well, we should be fine. Oh, no, because there could be this 1% of 1% of 1% chance that someone out there in the ether owns the right to this, and then they're going to come and sue your ass into oblivion, and then your company is going to be screwed because you're going to get a reputation for stealing other people's works and stuff. It's like, so, well, then how do we track them down? So maybe we can, I don't know, buy the rights off of them, do a business deal with them. I don't know. What would a person charge for intellectual property rights for a board game that hasn't existed in 40 years? $100,000? You want $1 million? Maybe it's $10,000 is all it would cost, assuming they'd be willing to sell. And it's like, oh, well, you can't track them down. And it goes in this infinite loop of, well, we can't track them down, so therefore nobody owns this. But oh, somebody out in the ether absolutely definitely owns the rights to this, and they're going to come and sue your ass if you make this game. So it's like, well, which is it? I've essentially reached the point where this is the project we were supposed to be doing instead of the other one that was based off of another game that was similar on Steam. And so now I'm taking this project and putting it on the back burner until further notice. I think it would be best if we released another game instead and built some notoriety for the company, made some income, actually got some profit and some assets, and then we could actually approach these property rights from a standpoint of a business. Like, we're a business and we want to make this game and we want to buy these property rights off of you for this now defunct company that doesn't even exist anymore. And it's like, all right, let's write up a business deal and we'll get the property rights transferred. All of that stuff is only possible if you're like a legitimate studio, which requires being successful and doing putting out a successful game. So we're right back at square one, where the only original ideas that I've had in the last couple years are the Halloween and Christmas Decoration Sandbox. So then I was talking about the Christmas Decoration Sandbox, and one of the questions that he asked me was, well, why did you think it was a good idea to pursue this endeavor when the Halloween game was a complete failure? And I actually took quite a lot of offense to that. For a couple different reasons. And I mentioned before, it takes a lot to offend me, but the way that the question was worded came from a standpoint of assuming that I knew what it took to make a successful game and that I was simply choosing not to. As though, let's say, for example, I had 4 video games out on the Steam store and one of them was financially successful in bringing in the sales, and I was neglecting that game in focus of working on other things that were less relevant and they didn't make any money. Then you might have an argument to be like, well, why are you wasting your time doing this when you could be doing that makes you money? But to ask me, why would I think it's a good idea to invest my time in this Christmas game when the Halloween game was a fail? It's like, well, what else would I do with my time? If I'm not spending my time, or I guess wasting it, if that's the way you want to word it, if I'm not wasting my time working on this passion project video game that's the Christmas Decoration Sandbox, then I'd be wasting my time working on some other passion project game that was equally as non-financially viable. You know, it's not like I just chose for my games not to sell. It's not like I just woke up and decided I was going to work on video games that nobody were going to play. It's not like I have a choice to make money or not. It's not my choice if people buy my product. It's like, oh, it's absolutely your choice. It's like, really, yeah, I made that decision for you. If you looked on the Steam page and you decided it wasn't your type of game, it wasn't interesting to you, you didn't want to play it, or you didn't want to pay the money for it, I made that decision for you, apparently, which I found exceedingly bizarre. But, you know, why would I spend my time? Why would I waste my time working on these passion projects? Because what else am I gonna fucking do with my time? It's not like any of it makes any money anyways, except for the one project I've found in the last 10 years that's made money. That's Jason Effects' game, Bareback Streets, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the pay situation is kind of all over the place. Now, I'm also fully aware that marketers don't hold at all times complete knowledge of all the demographics that are able to be marketed to. So my friend was talking about, well, he thinks that the Halloween game would be definitely a better investment of time, because he made the blanket assertion that, well, nobody cares about decorating for Christmas. No, nobody cares. If anything, they're going to be caring about Halloween because that's cool and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I get it. There's a certain, attractiveness to that. It attracts home haunters and people that like to make their own home-based haunted houses and things like that. So it attracts that crowd of people. But then he just makes the blanket assertion, well, nobody cares about Christmas. It's just a holiday. People just do it out of spite, but they really hate decorating for Christmas. And I'm like, really? Like, okay, because that's not my mom. Thinking about this game versus the Halloween game, this is a game I could see my mom playing, actually, to be completely honest. My mom has 8 boxes, 40-liter tubs, like those gigantic Rubbermaid tubs of Christmas decorations downstairs that she's pulling out right now and putting up all around the house. She goes absolutely crazy with her decorations in Christmas. She loves it. It's her favorite time of the year. She could give less of a rat's ass about decorating for Halloween. So to make that blanket assertion that, oh, well, this game is not appealing because nobody cares about Christmas. But then he did later correct himself and say, well, I only see this game as being marketable to 40-year-old women. It's like, well, that's kind of my mom. Although my mom's in her 50s, if 40-year-old women is the demographic of people that would play such a game, then 40-year-old women it is that I'm going to market it to. So that's kind of where I am right now, is that I'm bouncing back and forth between projects. I don't really know what to focus on other than to keep working for Jason Effects because that makes me money. And then as for my own personal projects, these side hobby projects, I don't know if any of them will be marketable at any point. Obviously, the Halloween game was not. And he asked me, well, why do you think the Halloween game failed? And I listed off a bunch of reasons. Oh, because it released and there was a bunch of bugs and there was like a lot of things missing, and it was an asset store flip game and there wasn't VR implemented. And then he would ask me, oh, well then why do you think it wasn't successful after the first year in 2021 when you did the update for VR? And it was like, oh, that's actually a good question that I hadn't considered before. If the main appeal for the game is VR, then why didn't it become successful after I released for VR? So then I was listing off a few other things like, oh, well, you can't edit the sandbox in VR. It's only when you've got it finished you can walk around with the headset, and it doesn't even have controller support and all these things. And then he was asking me another question, well, what is the appeal for VR? Why do people play VR games? I'm like, I don't know. They have a VR headset and they're looking for something to play. It's like, well, why would they buy a VR headset? It's like, I don't know, because it's trendy. And it's like, well, why is VR trendy? It's like, well, I don't know, why is anything trendy? So it did definitely challenge me and make me question a lot of things that I hadn't considered before, but a lot of the questions that I was being posed just seemed to go in circles or lead to non-answers that led to more non-answers. I mean, why is VR trendy? I don't know. Why do people play VR games? I don't know, because they have a headset and they're looking for a cool game to play, and it just popped up on their radar and it was on sale, and so they picked it up. Does it have to be more complex than that? So that's about all I had to cover on the marketing side of things. There was another thing I was going to bring up that happened this month. It's kind of got everything chaotic. My dad has been diagnosed with cancer, and so he's scheduled for treatment in February, and he's basically not going to be working the entire month of February. We think they've identified the cancer, this prostate cancer, early on enough that they can deal with it from a medical standpoint, and it won't lead to further complications. Although there's always a potential with surgery that it fails, that it doesn't work properly, that the complications come out of it. We don't really know what could happen within the next 6 months here. He could have to go back in a year to do more treatment if the cancer has spread more. He's in his 50s, so I could expect this if it was like 70, or my papa had cancer, his grandfather had cancer, now my dad has cancer. It's genetic in the lineage, so eventually I will probably get cancer, assuming I don't die of a heart attack by the time I turn 30 years old. So we're just playing that by ear. It's stressful. My mom, she doesn't work a full-time job. She works for Avon and sells that part-time. She does craft shows and things like that. And as for me, I make $1,000 a month. So if I can't make substantially more money and something were to happen to my dad, I'm basically screwed. It's just something that it's been weighing on my mind. And I can understand that from a perspective of a marketer, my friend who his whole job is about making money and understanding people and selling things. I don't come from that perspective. I frankly don't. And I might not ever fully understand it, which is a shame, because that means that I might not ever see success in this industry. And that's just something I'm going to have to live with. This industry is supposed to pay well. At least I'm told. I hypothetically am told that this industry pays well. It's something I've never been a part of. I've never been a part of a company that pays their employees well. And there should be no excuse for working in this industry for not being able to support not only myself, but my entire family should something happen to my parents. My mom shouldn't have to get a second job to help support me at the age of 25. But I'm trying everything I can fucking do and nothing works. So I don't know. That's about all I can say at this point. So with that said and out of the way, now I want to get to the section of the video that you were probably anticipating, which is some sneak peek previews of Christmas Decoration Sandbox and everything that I have entailed for that. So switching over to my desktop here, this is a picture that I pulled up from the movie The Polar Express, a very popular animated Christmas movie starring Tom Holland. Did I say Tom Holland? I am so sorry. My brain is fried. Tom Hanks. He basically voices half of the cast in this, Santa Claus and the conductor and all these other people. It's a great movie. This is kind of the aesthetic that I'm going for when it comes to the Christmas game. Big, open world, grandiose. I want somebody to be able to open the sandbox and make something to the complexity of Santa's workshop village that is seen here at the end of the movie, with the gigantic Christmas tree in the middle. They got the railroad track that goes around. They got all these buildings. And if you watch that part of the movie, you see the kids, they're running in and out of the streets. And it's got this kind of like Victorian style London aesthetic to it, and they're going, you know, under the tracks where the railway cars are and all of that, and into Santa's workshop. Like, I want somebody to be able to build Santa's workshop and build the entire village and walk around in VR. That's the kind of aesthetic and goal that I'm going for this game in terms of the scope. So in order to achieve that, I definitely need to put it off until next year, because if I was just to pump something out this year, it would be incomplete. It would have a few decorations. It would frankly suck. And this is a question that I should have asked my marketing friend that I didn't. What is the marketability of a game after it's been launched? I'd assume it's significantly less. So even if you fix the bugs and add a bunch of features and stuff, by that point, people are not really interested anymore. Now, there could be an alternative to that if the game is not well known to begin with, because eventually, maybe at some point, a game's review publisher, journalist, blog poster picks it up and writes a review on it, and then it gets some notoriety and gains some traction, as opposed to a game that goes immediately out of the gate with a bunch of hype like Cyberpunk, and then it completely flops, and by the time they do get the bugs and features added, nobody cares about it because it's already past its peak of hype. Now, you will notice in that picture that I brought up from the Polar Express, what do you see in the night sky off in the distance? Oh, look at this. It's the Aurora Borealis. Yes, I made these using a special shader graph that I followed a tutorial for. This guy has fantastic videos. I'll leave the link in the description. I followed his tutorial to make the slime pipe for the Halloween decoration game. And you'll see here that it's animated and it's moving about, but I'll show you what I have in addition to that. So here we have a control panel for the Aurora Borealis, and as you can see, we can actually select the color that we want it to be. So there's, I think, 12 different colors to pick from. You go through all the different colors there, and then you can change the strength of it as well. You can change the speed that it animates at. You can change the frequency if you wanted it to be more bent like that. You can change its position and rotation above the ground. So we'll change that. We'll rotate it around here. So this is the level of complexity that I want for this game, is that you can randomize this as well by clicking on the randomize. It'll randomize the effect there, or you can tweak it exactly how you want and put it exactly where you want in the sky above your position, and you can do that for a variety of different Aurora Borealis effects. So for now, I just have it working with one, but I want you to be able to configure several different effects all throughout the sky and then save it as is, and that'll get loaded into the sandbox when you pop into the world. So that'll add a little bit of extra visual effect, especially for nighttime settings. You can choose the skybox, whether you want it day or night. There's not going to be specifically a day-night cycle, like a lot of games will have a day-night cycle. But you can pick which skybox you want and then make the Aurora Borealis effects. So this is another feature that I have planned, is a tree decorator. You'll be able to place down the tree you want, and then you can select from a list of decorations, and you'll see that if you go over here, it's not letting me place the decoration there because it's conflicting with the other decoration or the ornament that's already in the tree, but it actually snaps to the specific branch you want to put on. So I want to put this decoration on that branch. I click right there. It creates the decoration there. I want to put it over here. I put one there, and I'll put one up here on this branch, and we can put one there. So not only are you going to be able to put on ornaments, I'll have a list of ornaments that you can select from. We can have pre-configured settings, so if you don't want to go that in detailed with the trees, you can pick from a set of trees that will already have their decorations in place. But I want to have light strings and garlands as well as being able to pick the star. So that is all something that will come eventually when the game is released next year. So I'm going to show you another feature that I want to be implementing into the Christmas decoration game that is not in the Halloween game. I want to be able to string lights between buildings. So you'll place down a building, and then that blue dot that you see represents an anchor point for a light string. So if I click here, it'll create an anchor point, and then I can click over here and create another anchor point. And then I can create one on the lamp, and then I can create one over here. And what I'm going to do is create one. I guess the collider on that's not working right now. Create one back over here. So using the OB rope plugin, I can actually create anchor points for the string and then string the lights between there. And then I'll have to find out some way of going along the light string and generating light bulbs at specific intervals along the string. So that is something that will be planned to be in the game. And then I'll have to add some logic in where if you delete a building, it'll automatically destroy those anchor points on that building and then redraw the light string. That way you're not just having the lights floating in midair. So that is something that will come as well. And not only will you be able to do that with light strings, but with garland as well. Alright, so the final thing that I wanted to show on this whirlwind tour of my ideas for this game is some testing that I was doing with a fur shader. And this is probably one of the biggest pain points that I've had to deal with. I found an amazing fur shader that allowed me to do this that you're seeing on screen here. These are basically capsules, and I've applied a particular material to them that makes the fur look like this. And as you can tell, it looks like a subsection or a little chunk, a little piece of garland. And that was the intent. And it looks really, really great when you apply it to the OB rope that I mentioned before, where you string between the buildings. So I want to take this shader and apply it as the material for the OB rope, so that way you can string garland between buildings. The problem is this shader is written in URP code, and the difference between Unity's built-in shaders, universal shaders, and high definition render shaders is exceedingly difficult. So I didn't even know what shaders were basically until the middle of October. I spent a week and a half trying to backwards engineer this shader to work for Universal Render Pipeline, because when I initially set up the Christmas game, I went with the URP because I wanted it to look great in VR. Unfortunately, because the Halloween game is built in the standard pipeline, it doesn't really look all that good in VR. So I went with the best possible visual option, which was the high definition render pipeline. Little did I know that there's a huge major difference between the shaders in that as well as the shaders in the universal pipeline. So because I don't know the exact specific details of how this shader was written in the universal render pipeline, I've picked apart each line of code trying to dissect it and figure out how it works. There's a lot of complicated math behind it that I frankly don't understand. I only learned HLSL basically with a few crash courses that I spent in October. I spent a week and a half on this problem before kind of giving up and putting it on the back burner. If I want to find a shader equivalent for high definition render pipeline, there basically isn't anything. The only first shaders that I can find that are equivalent to this are in the universal pipeline. So unless the original creator of this makes one for the high definition pipeline, or I can figure out what the heck is going on, I'm kind of at a loss of what to do. The shader graph is great in Unity. Unfortunately, if you've ever used the shader graph before, you know that it only allows you to make vertex and fragment shaders. That's it. You cannot use the oh, I don't even remember the name of it right now. The domain, you can't use geometric or tessellation shaders. Those are the ones that the shader graph can't do. So because this uses tessellation shaders to add the motion to the thing, and because it uses the geometric shaders to get what they call the little fins appended on the end of it there, I'm basically so out of luck. So there's a workaround that you can use to basically create a high definition render shader graph, turn it into HLSL code, and then open it up and then put in the code you need. And I tried doing that, but the results were rather less than fantastic. I think I'll put up an image on the screen here so you can see. Yeah, this is how my backwards engineering a week into this kind of turned out. So I don't know if I have to hire someone specifically to write me a shader code or backwards engineer this and convert it to work in high definition render pipeline. But I'm kind of at a loss end for now on how to do the garlands. It's not the most pressing issue at the moment. I can get away with just using solid colors for now for testing purposes, but eventually at some point I do want to be able to put in this shader in the high definition render pipeline, and that would have to be something that would have to be done before the launch of the game. So if it takes me a month and a half to figure out what the heck is going on and truly understand it, and then build my own shader, reverse engineering this one that was on this GitHub for free, I might have to invest that time. But all that time invested in doing so means less time actually developing the game. So that's about all I have for this video. Thank you for watching, and make sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Check out my other videos as well. I'm going to be doing more videos in the future, keeping updates on the development process for some of these games, and I'll look to see you then. Until then, thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.